childhood is presented by adults as being this wonderful and joyful time, but there is great darkness and fears and trepidation of being a child and difficulties. And that's why I think a story like this, a story that has the bones of a fairy tale, fairy tales teach children how to become adults. And I made this picture for a general audience. I think everyone was once a child, and everyone will be able to relate.
Taking that time off, kind of, I mean, it's been over a decade watching the market change and watching cinema change in so many ways. How does that affect you as not only a filmmaker, but also as a film viewer?
Well, it's interesting because I sort of see The Harvest as there was a wonderful book written by, I think, Robert Graves after World War I called Goodbye to All That. And it's about saying goodbye to an era. After World War I, the world changed immensely. To me, we shot film. And again, when we recorded our score, I worked with George Clinton, who I've worked with many times before. And he's teaching at Berklee School of Music in Boston. So we had a very young but very wonderful 22 or 26 piece string ensemble. So it's kind of my goodbye to analog, goodbye to film, and goodbye to analog string section, orchestral scores, and all that stuff. So, but it's hello to something entirely new. This film was made completely on independent money with no distribution entity. It's a 50-50 deal. Somebody got to make the film, and somebody got to sell the film. And I never had much to do with selling the film. Well, I learned a lot, I will have to say.
And you got this script, to my understanding, it followed more of a standard horror or almost a monster format. What did it take to make it a John McNaughton film?
I love films about the supernatural, but I'm not very much interested in dealing with it, although I've written a script that does deal with it. To me, the horror of the real world far outstrips any monster. So it was trying to make the story a believable story in the world we live in today. And I sort of think there are people crazy enough to try what we depict in the film.
That's very true, and like most of your films, you obviously kind of showcase the dark side of humanity, but as opposed to maybe Henry that appears so nihilistic and Wild Things that really offers a cynicism, this film has some touching moments, it shows hope, and I'm wondering, are you getting soft on us?
Not at all. It's dealing with children. I think you have to be very careful when you're dealing with children. They are cynical and mean-spirited and psychopathic for the most part, the way we adults are. So my intent of this film was to make the darkest film I possibly could, with no overt. There's no bad language. There's no sexual situations. There's no nudity. There's very little blood. To me, it's sort of a young adult film for smart kids. Because as children love dark stories and dark material, so we'll see how it turns out.
I read something that you said sometime in the past that I was hoping you could expand on, is that so many film students kind of go through film school, graduate, go right into the film world, and omit all these life experiences that you may get from working manual labor jobs in a real industrial urban setting.
Yes, I did manual, I did skilled labor, really. I held a carpenter's card, and I did other things. I traveled with a traveling carnival throughout North America. I built sailboats, racing sailboats in New Orleans. I made jewelry in New Orleans for a living. I tended bar. I worked in an advertising agency, a white-collar job. I worked in Encyclopedia Britannica art department as a graphic artist. So, I was roommates and good friends with a man who was a professional drug dealer and thief, who was one of the best people I've ever known. He stole his first Harley Davidson when he was 13. He was quite a person. I've used him, believe me, in various characters along the way. And I've also hung out since I've been in the movie business with some of the most famous people in the world. Ate at the best restaurants, ate at the best hotels. So I think it's really a wonderful thing to know people from all walks of life, from the bottom to the top, because when you have to render characters, again, I mean, we start with, I think, sort of Jean-Luc Godard made movies about movies, sort of a postmodern idea, and I love it. But I try to make movies about life, and when I have to render characters, I always go to my backlog of people I've known and draw from them, rather than draw from previously existing movie characters.
I was really sorry to hear about Tom Towles. I always thought he was an actor that I guess I just didn't see him as many times as I would have liked to, and obviously his performance in Henry is one of the greatest.
Well, Tommy was biracial up in Chicago, was not easy, and then joined the Marines as a young man. So he had a very interesting life also.
Is this an actual return? Are we going to see you more frequently now?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
You never know. I intend to keep working for quite a few years. We'll see if I can find funding.
Well, John McNaughton, thank you for talking to me. I hope you get a handsome tax return this year.
All right, thank you.
The producers, all they cared about was the sex scenes. Let's get the money shots in, but I didn't give a damn about the rest of the film. So the filmmakers were kind of free to do what they wanted, and then that's when you find really miraculous portals that you can go into.
Wow, boy, that's like mind-boggling. I don't know what I do. My dream back then was I was really in love with the shows at like PS 122 and Avant-Garde.
So you've really got to understand who your right audience is. And it's the same thing with investors. If it's someone that's interested in zombie films, or if it's someone that has a cultural element, or if maybe it's even someone that's never done a film before and is just intrigued, what is it that they find interesting about film?
They really knew how to pull you in a traditional way of telling a story and care about what they were saying and feel what they were saying.